Akasha is an Eastern term which, according to Thoth, refers to the planetary recorder cell, where thought, feeling, and occurrences throughout all time in the planet's history are stored as a record of knowledge within the subtle etheric substance of the planet. However, the nature of the Akashic records are much more complex and far-reaching than might be imagined, according to Thothic, whom we also know as Thoth, and who holds the title of being the great Akashic scribe. He tells us that the Akasha is an etheric subtle energy region arranged into bandings which are concentric shells within and around the earth. These Akashic energy bands, or shells, have a very high resonance with the God source emanating from within the human element. The electromagnetic and gravitational force fields of the planet are the media upon which these energy bands are able to record information, also providing stability to their structure. These energy bands are formed through the interaction of two distinct dynamics, which then form a third that becomes the final qualification for the planetary Akashic records, or Akasha. The first two dynamics are, 1, the divinity within human souls, and 2, the planetary soul. The planetary soul is the living essence of the planet, the heart of Gaia. These two dynamics interact to form the world soul, which the Lemurians called the Sheila, Sheila. Thus, the world soul is formed via the combined light of the souls present within the planetary experience, in interaction and combination with the planetary soul. So it is the world soul which is then the basic format for the Akashic records, or Akasha, held in the concentric energy bands previously mentioned. As they vibrate with the dynamic of the world soul, fields of resonance with the God source are created within their parameters. These Akashic energy bands interlink to form three-dimensional geometric patterns. These patterns then comprise the recording crystals within the recorder cell, or Akasha, of Earth. Thoth tells us that the most basic of these patterns is called the Akosha, Akosha, and is actually a single crystal. The Akosha is in the shape of a dodecahedron. Upon each face of the Akosha dodecahedron, the thought forms of the world soul create etheric ripples. The type of thought within these ripples determines where it records its impression upon the crystal and upon which face of the crystal it is to be recorded. Each recording crystal is receptive to receiving the impressions of the specific types of thought forms, just which ones is determined primarily by the degree and quality of the illumination contained within the thought. This is the manner in which the thought forms containing the knowledge, perception, and wisdom, as well as the patterns of the ages of Earth, are cataloged into the library of the recorder crystal of the planet. Within the main library of Earth's Akasha, there are two major levels. There are the higher or greater Akasha and the lower or lesser Akasha. In the lesser Akasha, every thought, feeling, and expression of consciousness expressed upon the earth is recorded and compiled according to the intensity level they find within the souls of earth who produce them. In other words, whatever is continually fed by the power of mind and emotion in humanity builds a field of increasing intensity within the lesser Akasha. Some of the most prevalent consciousness thought forms in the lesser Akasha would be such things as world religions, common issues of survival, and politics. Many of these records contain accurate and true information. However, they are also liberally intermixed with many illusions that are born of mass belief systems as well. When accessing the lesser Akasha, the individual Akashic investigator's thoughts, feelings, and beliefs will be magnetically attracted to the information, true or illusional, that supports their own inner feelings and beliefs. If the Akashic investigator is exceptionally clear mentally and emotionally and not egoically attached to their ability to access the information available within the lesser Akasha, they can move amongst the strong currents of lower magnetic energy present and align with the highest truth to be found in the lesser Akasha. The greater Akasha does not actually store the thought forms contained in the world soul, those of the planetary consciousness, as does the lesser Akasha. Rather, it alchemically extracts the nectar, the purest knowledge forms, from the lesser Akasha and translates them into highly defined light inscriptions, which are then flamed or inscribed into the heart of each crystal in the greater Akashic field of the recorder crystal. Understand that there is only one recorder cell with two main fields or levels. These light inscriptions then emanate repeating pulses of light language, imaging from the center of the recording crystal, which can be intercepted by a sentient being. In order for a sentient being to read the greater Akashic record, they must first be able to receive this information deep within their own recorder cell. Therefore, the individual is not channeling, as it is commonly understood when working in this level of the Akasha, but summoning an attunement, a vibration between the greater Akasha recording crystal within the planetary Akashic recorder cell and the prototype recorder cell within their own crystalline DNA spirals. The information that is contained within the greater Akasha, which the individual has then attuned to, is sent to their brain-mind complex from their own recorder cell to interact with the individual's process of thought formation. Thus, it is through the individual's thought formation process being modulated with this higher level information that some communicatable understanding of the knowledge received is effective. Unfortunately, while the information received in this manner is relatively pure, it is also very difficult to comprehend when it is transcribed into the common languages of the earth. This is due to the fact that in this current reality, we have structured our languages to communicate a very limited understanding of the omnipotence we call God and the many aspects and nuances of divine expression. Thus, often another translation factor needs to be applied. There are various adjustments that can be made, but in my case, Thoth supplies me with keys and codes or guidance commands which I can use as a Rosetta Stone to further translate the information. This is accomplished on a subconscious level, whereby these key codes are placed into my auric field and therefore read by an area of my brain which is responsive to them. The codes are in the form of pictures or pictographs that prompt and orient my language center into a greater comprehension of the knowledge being released from my recorder cell. In addition, Thoth often directly answers my questions. This information flow also comes to my conscious awareness via my recorder cell. When I need clarification concerning certain types of material, Thoth many times then guides me to other areas of the greater Akasha in which the specific knowledge can be located to give me a larger perspective on the original information I am attempting to translate. Since I play an interactive role in decoding the knowledge downloaded into my recorder cell from the greater Akasha, Thoth refers to me as a source translator. I sometimes just call it an Akashic translator. The whole procedure for me, or anyone working primarily through direct receipt of the greater Akasha, is not an infallible program, most especially in that the mental personality has to be involved at some level in interpretation of the information so that it may be brought into a pattern suitable for planetary comprehension. It needs to be realized that all humans on the planet interact with the lesser Akasha. They contribute to it and receive imprints from it both in dreams and waking states that influence their lives. Thus we have the greater and lesser fields of the Akasha present within the recorder cell of the earth. The lesser Akasha is influenced and greatly controlled by lesser human thought, feelings, impressions, etc. The greater Akasha is impersonal and responds only to the essence of truth within the soul. Thoth states that in the case of the higher Akasha, although it does not store the thought forms contained in the world soul, it does integrate with it, as it extracts the pure essence or nectar from the lesser Akasha. Thus, this is the manner in which it integrates with the world soul via the lesser Akashic realms. Before continuing with the reading, which was given to me incidentally around 2002, I want to also state that the lesser Akasha relies on memory. The greater Akasha does not connect to the kind of memory we understand. It has a form of memory, but it's way beyond our comprehension, not gray matter memory. So that when you're entering the lesser Akasha, you are stimulated to remember things, like where did I leave my car keys, things of that nature. And that's stored in there, but you have to have a certain connection to remember it. That's why people with Alzheimer's or other, problems with memory have difficulties, because they have to use their brain matter memory in order to connect to the lower Akasha. With the greater Akasha, there's no reason to do that. There's no memory involved in the gray matter. You're constantly receiving the new imprint of the truth. It's gnosis. It is as it is. It is that the car keys were left in the dresser drawer. It's not that you have to remember that you need to know it, or where is it. So it just immediately forms in your mind. So why is it then that we have memory problems, even naturally have memory problems? Because we do not know how to consistently access and integrate with the greater Akasha. I will be addressing this further at the conclusion of this reading. To continue, yet there is another, even greater realm of the Akasha, which Thoth defines as the supra-Akasha. This field is not within the earth domain, but is comprised of the Akashic recording crystals of the universe. It operates similarly to the greater Akasha of the earth, but is not integrated with any individual world soul. Instead, it contains the harmonic musical language of the angels, archangels, Elohim, and all the creator lords of the universe. Because the supra-Akashic does not interface with the lesser worlds directly, only master souls of earth can as yet interact with this high level of holographic thought form information. When this planet enters its ascended phase as the new Earth star, souls present within that reality system will then be able to start accessing some of this higher level information as the supra-Akasha begins to feed selected harmonics into the new Earth star greater Akashic field. This will be a gradual, ongoing process, beginning with the Earth's entry into the ascended new Earth star reality, and will complete at the end of that next cycle, which he calls the new Earth star aeon. The records of Thoth. Now that a good understanding of the nature of the Akasha has been revealed, we can investigate the overlay upon the greater Akasha called the records of Thoth. As I've previously said, certain master beings, including Thoth, have their own repositories of knowledge within the greater Akasha. These repositories are actually filters which define the pure extract taken from the lesser Akasha in a specific modality of divine encoding. Thus, the souls who are meant to work with that certain form of encoding can more accurately discern its particular essence within the whole library represented in the greater Akasha. This is kind of like flagging or tagging files on a computer hard drive for a particular operation, like when you do a backup. The tagged files form a new database of sorts that can be considered a repository of information which has been created from the existing files on the hard drive. Why is this necessary? Thoth explains to me that this world and all aspects of the universe in which the earth resides are in a process of returning to source. In this process, the many components of this universe are all moving toward the full light spectrum source at different velocities, or rates of evolution, so to speak. In order for all these differing aspects of the fallen universe to move in a confluent manner towards source, various levels and modalities of guidance must be inserted into the light program of return issued forth from the divine hierarchy of light. Within this framework, the masters have their service, and in concordance with that service may develop and maintain their distinct repositories of knowledge within the greater Akashic library. There are individuals who are ordained to the service of working with these repositories to reinsert the knowledge contained therein into the planetary consciousness aspect of the world soul. This occurs in synergy with other souls who are required as well in order to effectively disseminate and hold that consciousness vibration within the world soul dynamic. The net result of this activity, then, is to help bring some of the various components of this universe, in this case those primarily related to the Earth, into synchronization in their evolutionary movement with other aspects of the universe. In other words, the masters are working to help bring the slower aspects of the universe up to the same speed as the faster moving components, by accelerating or quickening them via the release of the pure information contained within their specific repositories in the greater Akasha. These releases are carefully timed by the hierarchy to assure that the acceleration will serve the greater purpose of synchronization rather than cause further imbalance. From among all these master repositories, Thoth informs us that his is somewhat unique in regard to the manner in which it was originally formed and in how it is organized. It is for this reason that the archetype of Thoth, or Tehuti, which bears his name and higher mind impression, is known as the scribe of the gods and the guardian of the Akasha. There are ancient texts that state the living Thoth Hermes was the author of some 3,000 books. We must consider that this master soul was upon the earth twice where he used the name Thoth. In the first experience, he came to the earth as Thoth-Muzurud, a being from Orion who lived 5,783 years on this planet in that embodiment. He returned later in this planet's history as the earth-incarnated Thoth-Rasmus of Afra, who was born in Tibet and lived 300 years in that form. I have to say that because he then went into the inner earth and transformed himself into a new embodiment. He didn't really die. Certainly in all that time, he could have easily written 3,000 books. This is how I had imagined it to be. But then Thoth informed me that during the 2 consecutive lifetimes as the Thoth, which is really a title, not a name, on Earth, He actually wrote not one single book of any kind by his own hand or even through dictation. He did write letters and certain alchemical formulas down and perhaps notes to his colleagues or students, but there were no books of any kind, anything of any volume. When I then asked him about the emerald tablets, which he was supposed to have written, he replied that these tablets had actually been impressed with an energetic fire coming from his chakras while his body was in a supra-luminous state. They therefore contain fire codes which can be translated into codified text. This is also true of several other works which he inscribed upon gemstones in this manner. However, these are not comprised of actual written information as we would define it, and the gem encodings of Thoth are few in number. In his embodiments, both as Thoth Muzurut and Thoth Rasmus, he directly inscribed several thousand books into the greater Akasha via the previously described process. His whole body of work, which Thoth committed to codification and expression through divine fire, forms the original doctrine or overlay for the records of Thoth. As such, it became his repository of knowledge and wisdom in the greater Akasha. In both the ancient and recent past, there have been source translations by other souls of the Thothic works in his repository, yet he informs me that they were never placed into the written word through any activity of his own. After his 2 Thoth embodiments on Earth, this soul continued to incarnate into specific key experiences on the planet. All the while he maintained the template of his Thothic form, which he could recreate genetically at will. His soul would then return to this higher genetic vehicle at regular intervals between his other incarnations in the Earth's experience. He is currently in his ultra-genetic Thoth body within the inner Earth realm. During the times when he is working in this Thoth form, this being has continued to inscribe updated information into his Akashic repository, the records of Thoth. This activity not only places Thoth's signature of spiritual expression and mastery upon the greater Akasha, as have other master beings done with their signatures as well, but also inserts these light-inscripted codices within the repository itself. These insertions then further enhance and direct the presence and essence of the divine programs contained within the planetary Akashic recorder cell. Thoth tells us that both Enoch and Melchizedek maintain light-inscripted codices in the Akasha. I add here that both Enoch and Melchizedek were incarnations of Thoth. At least the Thoth soul, which was a singular soul, held the apex of a pod of souls, usually 5, sometimes less, that align with a particular incarnated being. In such cases, these are very highly evolved souls, and thus incarnation, and there's usually a body soul that holds the frequency, and then it moves up the tier until you get to the capstone. And Thoth was the capstone soul, so he informs me of both Enoch and Melchizedek. To continue, the records of Enoch and Melchizedek are composed by a few specific etheric books which link into other areas of the greater Akasha via specific light encodings. Consequently, the development of knowledge within these repositories is dependent upon the entire field of the greater Akasha. Without these links to other portions of the greater Akasha, the information stored in their repositories cannot be deciphered by human sentience. Thoth's repository is singular in its form and operation, in that it has many and voluminous light-inscripted Akashic texts vibrating within the holograph of the whole greater Akasha, initialized within the very crystals that contain his recordings. In other words, Thoth's repository of knowledge contains all knowledge inherent within the greater Akasha as part of its own form, but yet is not limited to that base of knowledge. In this way, his texts are still a part of the whole synergism of the greater Akasha, but the mountain comes to his repository, rather than the information within the repository having to move outside of its own context in order to connect to the whole. This does not infer that Enoch's or Melchizedek's repositories are inferior to Thoth's, but that the nature of their work is different. Indeed, it is the nature of Thoth's place in the higher planetary hierarchy that creates the uniqueness of his presence as a master being, an archetype, and a keeper of the records. This concludes with the reading of the transmission I received in 2002. I wish to add as an addendum in March of 2023, as we are now moving further and further into what Thoth calls the pyramidus radius matrix, which is a matrix of frequency that is a platform to prepare us for Light Principle 40, LP 40, the flashpoint that takes us from a world system 1 to a world system 2, in this case into the new Earth star. As this happens, and we're moving more and more into that platform, we are going to find that we are not able to access the lesser Akasha so much because it is disappearing. It is gradually disintegrating. That means that in order to find your car keys in the near future, you are going to have to go to the greater Akasha. And that means that you cannot just connect with a memory thread from your gray matter, but you must take a leap into pure gnosis that informs you where your car keys are, rather than traces your memory in the gray matter to make that connection. This is why so many people now, even the younger people, are having difficulty with their memory, or find that all of a sudden there's a leap, and they feel something different, like, well, I was thinking this and now I feel differently and I can't quite remember that thread. This is because we're moving into this space where the disintegration is becoming more and more obvious. This transfer from the dependency on the lesser Akasha to the greater Akasha is a natural process at this time, and it's being assisted by the higher levels of being, from the angels to the illumined ones, to just, the whole process of planetary and cosmic evolution. However, one does need to have a certain modicum of awareness. It doesn't have to be with tall angels, but just a connection. When I say connection, I mean a real dedication to one's own inner voice and humanity at large, the feelings of compassion, love, justice, temperance, all of the keynotes that make us a true human being rather than a human doing. And these things have always been keynotes for those of us who have an awareness and a desire for good and for development of one's inner being. But at this time on the planet, it is important to realize that you are at the center of an evolving field of light on this planet that has never been before on this planet. We've gone through many cycles, but this is the end of a cycle. And for those of us who wish to continue, who are moving into the light of the World System 2 New Earth Star, it is truly a leap in our whole environment of self, inner self as well as outer self. This is important because it's never been done before on this planet. We are expected to rise to the occasion in more ways than one. Now is the time for all thinking, feeling, aware human beings on this planet to make the decision in their hearts and minds to receive the wisdom and the instant gnosis of the higher Akasha and move their whole being into a state of starlight.